Last chance to look at me, Hector.
Ninetales is a Pokemon where the general opinion of it by the GSC NU player base has generally heavily changed over the course of over the years. Back in 2020, it was considered to be like a top tier Pokemon by most people, or at least like a very, very good Pokemon. But slowly but surely, the opinion of it of a lot of players, of Ninetales has generally decreased over the years. Now, why would people think highly of it? And which a lot of people still do today. Like it's somewhat contentious. I don't know if it's say contentious the right word, but like a lot of people really do value what it brings to the table. And what does it bring to the table? Well, if we look at its stats, its speed is already very, very good for the tier. It outspeeds Xatu, which, by GSC NU standards, basically counts as fast. And it has also amazing special bulk, as well as a solid special attack stat. And it uses all of these traits to be one of the best checks in the tier to the mighty Xatu. Xatu cannot 3-hit KO it, and Ninetales is faster and has a solid chance to 3-hit KO it back with Flamethrower. It is, and what possibly is its most important trait is that it is the best check in the tier to Wheezing. Now, if you watched my last video, you may know like how dangerous Wheezing is, and being able to just blank it is absolutely incredible. Wheezing cannot 3-hit KO, I believe, and Ninetales. The damage from Ninetales Flamethrower is permanent, so Ninetales can just permanently rest stall it while threatening it out with Flamethrower. Wheezing basically has to explode on Ninetales, but that means it's not exploding on, say, other members of your team like Dugtrio or Octillery, or even Dugong for that matter. It also destroys some slightly lower tier threats like Magmar and Magnemite. Its speed is also very useful for more than just Xatu. Its speed type is Fearow, which outspeeds like a very large majority, which is one of the most dangerous cleaners in the tier. And it also outspeeds Primeape, who is also very, very dangerous to most teams. And also with Toxic in his moveset, it also generally cripples a lot of Pokemon like Porygon, Kingler, Rock types by the way, who would otherwise be solid at taking Ninetales' Flamethrower, and Curse Light Screen Stantler, who Ninetales obviously isn't the best way to stop Curse Light Screen Stantler because it's weak to Earthquake, but given how dangerous it is, being able to just stop it with being able to get an emergency Toxic off and just ensure that it doesn't just instantly 6-out your team is very, very nice. It's also nice as a defensive Pokemon because it is not set up fodder for Pineco, who... And... So... All of these traits are amazing to have on one Pokemon, especially being able to check Xatu and Wheezing in one slot is not really something anything else in the tier can do. So, and as a result, Ninetales has a lot of balanced teams have heavily relied on Ninetales over the past couple years because they need as much defensive utility as they can out of each slot. So Ninetales Ninetales' ability to check two of the most dangerous threats in the tier, two Pokemon who are arguably number 1 and number 2, is an absolutely incredible set of traits to have, as well as alongside everything else it has. Now, its matchup spread sounds great until you realize that a certain Pokemon called Octillery exists. You know how Xatu and Weezing are arguably number 1 and 2 respectively? Well, a Pokemon that also contends for a number 1 and 2 slot, and if it's not number 1 and 2, it's number 3, is Octillery. Now, being weak to Octillery alone kind of neuters, like, its good matchups. Now, its good matchups still exist, but, like, being weak to Octillery is like, just really, just, like, uniquely kind of bad. Especially for Ninetales, who doesn't really hurt it much with its moves. And Octillery coming in on Ninetales can just instantly, not only just instantly kill all your momentum, but basically just hand it over to your opponent, because you're immediately forced out in front of one of the most if not the most dangerous one of the most dangerous tanks in the tier. And it is not easy to fit Octillery counters to your team to try and make up for it. The best Octillery counter in the tier is actually Chinchou, and Chinchou is also notoriously hard to fit on your team because it struggles with a lot of the bulky normal types as well as Dugtrio. And other hard counters like Gloom and pure grass types also aren't easy fits. And now, part of the reason why Ninetales was considered a top threat for so long was actually because Octillery wasn't considered a top threat for the entirety of GSC NU's lifespan. Like, if you look at the February 2021 VR, you'd see Octillery is all the way down at number 17, well below stuff like Sudowoodo, which would be considered like crazy today, because like Octillery really did have a massive rise. Partly because people realize just how like insane of a tank it is, and how both insane how good of a tank it is, and how strong it is, Like Octillery is nowhere near as bulky as some of the other tanks in the tier, like Dugong, but its ability to be as tanky as it is while being one of the most dangerous, while having some of the most strongest attacks in the tier, is what led people to realize that it is solidly number 3 or 2, and to some people even number 1. But for a while, Octillery was not considered the GSC NU players did not have that high of an opinion of Octillery, and thus Ninetales, the opinion of Ninetales was generally a lot higher. Now Octillery isn't even the only top threat that Ninetales loses to. It also loses to Dugtrio. Well, unlike Octillery, Dugtrio has a much harder time. Dugtrio can't really switch into Ninetales, especially since it gets instantly ruined by Toxic. But it's faster, and Revenge kills Ninetales fairly solidly. And Dugtrio is just as bad, if not worse, to struggle against, because it is not only is it one of the most dangerous offensive threats in the tier, it is fast, and a lot of offensive teams, Revenge kills a lot on offensive teams like Ninetales and sometimes even Furo. And while Octillery does fit well on offensive teams, it is nowhere even close to a good Dugtrio counter, because it often needs to run Hidden Power Electric for, well, other Octillery, and so once it's sleeping, it only has a 1 in 3 chance to break Dugtrio's sub with Sleep Talk. So Dugtrio can just hide behind a sub and fish for bad Sleep Talk rolls, go for Screech, and then Octillery is kind of just fucked. even if octillery pulls rest, that resets its sleep counter, meaning that Dugtrio has essentially more turns to just fish for for a hidden power electric sleep talk roll, or even just damage it outright. One way you can solve this problem is by running Ice Beam over hidden power electric, and that does let you, and that actually makes you a decent check to Dugtrio. But A, you're still not perfect because you still take a lot from Earthquake, and B, it means you are now forced out by opposing hidden power electric octillery. And if Ninetales has shown that like being forced out by octillery is one of the worst traits you can have in this tier. So it's generally not worth it to run Ice Beam Octillery unless you already have like a hard counter to hidden power electric octillery, which, as I mentioned before, is not easy to fit. Now, both of these, the octillery flaw is already bad enough, but like alongside Dugtrio, it makes for quite a difficult Pokemon to fit on your team, because you do really need to go out of your way to compensate for these weaknesses. That's why Ninetales has generally found itself hard. For a long time, I've generally found it difficult to fit Ninetales on offensive teams. It's definitely not just for those reasons, but those two reasons make up a pretty significant reason. Like a lot of Octillery's hard count, the only real Pokemon that hard counter both Octillery and Dugtrio is like pure grass types. But those Pokemon are generally very difficult to fit and are pretty much impossible picks on offensive teams because they pretty much instantly kill momentum with how weak they are, and they also let in Dugtrio all day, and not Dugtrio, Pineco all day. So you need to compensate it with a spinner who also can't really be fit, who also generally struggles to fit on offensive teams. Now, one team style that these grasses tend to fit on better is actually balanced teams, and in terms of grasses on balance, the one you'll find most often isn't actually a pure grass type. It's actually Gloom. Now, Gloom isn't actually that good of a check to Dugtrio because does not resist Earthquake, but it does get the job done well versus Octillery. So in theory, that Ninetales would just be an easy fit on balanced teams, right? On like Gravel Gloom balanced teams, right? It loves the spin support, and it loves Gloom hard checking Octillery, and it generally just has and it should generally realistically have a better shot on these teams, right? Well, yes, definitely. It's definitely a lot better on these kinds of teams than it is on offensive teams, but it's still not an easy fit because it still packs that Dugtrio weakness. And while these teams tend to run Dugong, aka a much harder trick to Dugtrio, it's still not always easy to compensate for that and the Octillery weakness, even in battle. And it's still not also because these teams are generally a lot slower paced than offensive teams. It is Ninetales, and because these teams tend to already kind of find it difficult to gain momentum, enough momentum to win the game. Ninetales, the fact that Ninetales momentum just gets killed the second an octillery comes into it is very bad. Keep in mind though that like Balance Team's goal isn't just to like stall the opponent out until they run out of PP or they run out of steam. That would mostly be considered like semi-stall or even just flat stall. But Balance Teams usually generally do want a little bit of extra power to them. Otherwise, and Ninetales makes it generally a lot harder to fit the power, because especially when it's giving up momentum so easily. And not to mention that GSC NU is generally like an extremely fast-paced offensive tier in general, so the fact that Ninetales can not only doesn't, that at least this Ninetales set not only does not fit well on offensive teams, but also generally struggles against one of the most one of the two of the most dangerous threats on offensive teams, and even on the slower-paced teams that it would fit better in, it still doesn't always fit in. You can kind of see how difficult it is to team build with Ninetales. Especially because how like one of the octillery hard counters that actually can fit on offensive teams, Chinchou, also stacks Doug Trio weaknesses with Ninetales. And Ninetales' special attack is also not the best, meaning that like it can give set of opportunities to the likes of Curse Talk Wigglytuff. In a similar vein, definitely doesn't have it as bad as something like say Dugong, but the problem does exist. Overall, it is very difficult to make up for being weak to Octillery and Doug Trio, and is overall very difficult. And like it's generally difficult to make up for being weak to fast-paced offensive teams in such a fast-paced and hard-hitting environment. A lot of Pokemon now. Most of the top threats you'll see in GSC NU do have some weaknesses to some top threats, but they generally don't have it as bad as Ninetales does, or B is dangerous enough for it to be worse dealing with these threats. For example, Primeape. Despite losing to the top two Pokemon of the two of the best Pokemon in the tier, Weezing and Xatu, it generally is both extremely dangerous with its massively powerful cross shots, so much so that it's worth dealing with these weaknesses for the reward of using Primeape. And also because Primeape generally has it easier with its weaknesses than Ninetales, because Thunder 2-hit KOs Xatu on the Switch and can potentially get a paralysis on it, while Weezing doesn't use recovery, so multiple Thunders alongside with Spikes out means that Weezing is not gonna last forever to be able to deal with Primeape over the course of a long game. It can stop it like once or twice, but like it's not all. But like in the long run, Primeape can bowl it over and just go berserk afterwards. And that's assuming Weezing doesn't like explode on a different threat, which Weezing loves to do. So even that weakness can be salvageable. Usually, Pokemon that fit in the category of having like massive weaknesses are usually offensive threats that can potentially just bowl over the game once these weaknesses are covered. For example, Zapdos in RBYOU has an extremely bad weakness of being weak to Rhydon, who not only counters it, but essentially turns its existence into almost worse than dead weight, because essentially it just means a free switch in for Rhydon. However, Zapdos is one of the most dangerous to pretty much everything that isn't a rock type or like Jolteon. Like a common meme you'll see in RBYOU is now play it against Zapdos, and that's because it just beyond the rock types and Jolteon, its checks and counters list are like basically null, because it can deal with paralysis by using agility, and it can deal with Executor and Chansey by Drill Peck, which especially is dangerous with crits. And all of this makes it very well worth it to deal with Zapdos's weakness, to deal with the weakness of Rhydon. And usually that comes in the form of making it so that every single one of the other members on your team can handle Rhydon, like having Executor or like Reflect, or even more so Ice Beam Chansey, and having Ice Beam on your own Snorlax, so that Rhydon has very little opportunities except for Zapdos. Like Zapdos seems just tend to just overcompensate for Rhydon. Some of them even bring like Articuno, like because it switches into Rhydon's EQ and threatens in Cold, Swift, one-hit KO with Blizzard. Another example is Gyarados and Zapdos itself in Gen 4 OU. Both of them aren't like necessarily walled by his rep, but are weak to Stealth Rock. However, both are so extremely threatening that it is well worth it to get rid of hazards or just deal with them. Gyarados is one of the most dangerous sweepers with Dragon Dance, while Zapdos is just generally strong. And plus, both aren't exactly useless as soon as Stealth Rock comes up. Now, where am I getting with this? Well, the point is that like Ninetales' weaknesses of being weak to Octillery and Dugtrio are just as bad, are about as bad as the weaknesses I mentioned earlier. But the difference is Ninetales is not like this like extremely dangerous defensive threat that like that's so dangerous it's worth going through the team building strains of getting rid of dealing with Octillery and Dugtrio. It's still very good defensively, and its defensive traits are still absolutely incredible. Like, its matchup list outside of Octillery and Dugtrio is actually extremely stacked. But like, especially in like again such a fast-paced offensive metagame, like, do you really want to go through all this effort just for a really good defensive Pokemon when the same or even a lower amount of effort in something like, say, Primeape, Weezing, or even Xatu can get you much further. Now, everything I've been saying so far is basically just why Ninetales generally struggles to fit on the fast-paced offensive teams that define GSC, NU, and how even balanced teams don't always want to fit it. Now, and also why Ninetales has generally been on a downfall. But there has been some innovation with Ninetales actually fairly recently, and it's not like this like big set overhaul. It's literally just one move change, and that is replacing Toxic with Sunny Day. Now, what does that do? Well, first we need to understand what this Sunny Day does, we need to talk about Restock Stantler. Or just Stantler in general, really. Stantler as you've seen in my very horribly recorded Stantler video, is one of the most busted Pokemon in the tier, and it was, for a while it was known for that because of its Cursed Light Screen set, but nowadays people realize that its Rest Sleep Talk set is almost as dangerous because it can also act as a battery. It can also use its power early game, whereas with the Cursed Light Screen set, it has to preserve its health for late game. And also its ability to just check a lot, to just deal with a lot of like bulky Pokemon that offensive teams may struggle with, such as Dugong, Chinchou, etc. So, where am I going with this? Well, Stantler doesn't exactly switch into octillery. Well, Stantler switches into Dugong fairly well and can just rest stall it. The same cannot be said for octillery, who cleanly 3-hit KOs it with Surf. And though Stantler is faster and will get hits on it, and it does actually win the 1v1 if it's in at full HP versus octillery, because it just returns 3 times because it can just 3-hit KO it. But if it switches in, then it's not really winning the 1v1 because Surf just 3-hit KOs it. It can wear it down to low HP, but like you'll lose your Stantler as a result. And also octillery has the option of resting and the Sleep Talk rules are not in your favor, because if it clicks rest, clicking rest is essentially a win for it. It's only clicking Ice Beam or Hidden Power Electric that's a loss. So that all that means is that Stantler is not good at switching into octillery, which isn't necessarily that bad of a trait because, well, nothing on offensive teams really switches to octillery. Nothing really switches to octillery, really, unless you're a grass type on a bounce, or a grass type that's restricted to bounce teams. So, where am I going with this? Well, so with Sunny Day, you would think that it's supposed to like bolster Ninetales' potential as an offensive threat and thus make it dangerous enough on offense to be worth running on offense. Well, that's not really. Well, that is somewhat the case, but like the main purpose of Sunny Day is to prop up its teammates. Octillery is such an insane threat that being able to neuter it with Sunny Day and then switch it, let your offensive threat switch into it is quite a valuable trait to have, especially for an offensive threat as dangerous as Rest Talk Stantler is. And considering that octillery is more commonly found on offensive teams than balanced teams, and there's also the point of how Stantler generally acts as a battering ram against offensive teams because it has far fewer opportunities to switch in. Because the offensive threats on the pokes on offensive teams are way stronger, way faster, and also it's generally a lot more punishing for a Stantler to use rest because Xatu is much more dangerous on offensive teams than it is on balanced teams because it will often be accompanied by spikes. So Stantler Stantler resting and then means that Xatu come in and force it out because Stantler does not want to 1v1 Xatu while asleep. Because it can pull Earthquake and just be completely fucked. And it's slower and it gets straight KO'd by Psychic. And also Xatu isn't even the only issue. Furo is also quite good on offensive teams, and so if there's Xatu and Furo on the opposing team, then Stantler resting is kind of just the best sentence for it. So, with that in mind, Stantler generally goes generally plays a lot more aggressively and making the most of every single opportunity it has to switch in. And just so the point is, with Sunny Day on Ninetales, if you can give Stantler more opportunities to come in, then it will be then that can be just an absolutely incredible set of traits to have. Because, especially if it can come in on a Pokemon that's otherwise as difficult to take advantage of as Octillery. Now, Stantler certainly isn't the only insanely dangerous offensive threat that benefits from Wigglytuff's son. Ninetales' son, Curse-Talk Wigglytuff, under Sun, can also take advantage of can also take advantage of Octillery. A matchup which, by the way, it otherwise is very bad in, because Octillery easily 3-hit kills it with Surf. Now, in all honesty though, Wigglytuff is definitely not as dangerous under Sun as Stantler is, because it generally needs to curse up to be more threatening a lot of the time, and a Curse-Talk Wigglytuff, I would say, is like almost broken. Like, it generally is much more of a late game poke than a Restock Stantler is, because it's much weaker, slower, and generally wants to wait until like late game, where its checks are weakened enough to where it can realistically break a huge hole with Curse and fall off asleep as a result. Now, Ninetales, what Ninetales' son does is that, like, it kind of makes it easier for Wigglytuff to just find that setup opportunity. And Ninetales is especially nice with Wigglytuff because Weezing's Explosion or Haze is one of the best ways of stopping it. So Ninetales being able to completely blank Weezing and prevent it from making progress without Explosion is is also really good for Wigglytuff. Now, one of the bigger ways that Ninetales' son also benefits offensive teams is actually with Pineco. Not Spicy Extra, but I don't even know what that move does, actually. I don't really keep up with Gen 9 that much, but so with Sun Up, Pineco, okay, here's the way to say it. One of the most beautiful things you will ever see in GSC NU is Pineco setting up spikes in front of an Octillery in Sun. It's something that, like, almost shouldn't exist, shouldn't be possible, but it is, really. And considering that, like, it's generally not easy to find opportunities for Pineco to use spikes, Ninetales giving it an extra opportunity in neutering Octillery is absolutely incredible. Now, as you can see, what this does is, what Sunny Day on Ninetales does is essentially make it easier for it to make progress when it's on offensive teams. It's not even in the sense of making progress on its own. It's making progress by ensuring that its teammates can make progress. It's kind of and it also makes it a better progress maker itself, because its flamethrowers are much stronger under Sun. So, and also, while most of what I've been saying is heavily tunnel bitching Octillery as the bulky water, the other water type metagame defining water type, Dugong, is also heavily neutered by Sun. Actually, and believe it or not, even more so than Octillery is, because believe it or not, under Sun, Ninetales can actually 1v1 Dugong. Because Surf does like actual peanuts to Ninetales under Sun, and it doesn't even need to fear freezes, because under Sun, because freezes can't happen under Sun. Now, and also one of the waters, Chinchou, which also hard counters Ninetales and is also generally threatening to offensive teams in general. It's completely neutered by Sun, not just because of how its Surf gets weakened, but also its Thunder accuracy gets lowered to 50%, meaning that like making it very, very unreliable. Now, on the topic of Thunder accuracy, it also neuters Weezing and Primeape, both of whom rely on Thunder to hit their best revenge killer, Xatu. So, under Sun, Xatu suddenly becomes a reliable switch-in when it otherwise wouldn't be. Now, and Ninetales is even a dangerous offensive threat under Sun itself, not just because of the obvious case of Flamethrower being boosted, but also because like sometimes people would want to immediately switch their Octillery out of a Ninetales setting of Sunny Day in fear that you'll switch in like a dangerous offensive threat like Stantler and just like instantly instantly be on the back foot. So some players will switch their Octillery out immediately after Ninetales sets up Sun, which means that Ninetales gets a very dangerous boosted attack off. Now this type of prediction can work both ways, and Octillery might want to stay in should it fear Ninetales launching a dangerous attack off. So it puts the Octillery user in a catch-22 situation, really. Now, another way Ninetales works... Also, all of this isn't just the only way Ninetales can take advantage of turn its weaknesses into strengths. Because Graveler it can sometimes be tasked with handling Ninetales, especially because its attacks won't be neutered under Sun. Ninetales can take advantage of it by just like weakening Graveler with Flamethrower, which is huge because Pineco, because Graveler is relied on to spin away Pineco spikes, so Ninetales just aids in the effort of just wearing down Graveler so that Pineco wins the spikes war, and then your opponent's team starts to crumble because Graveler is not often seen with Pineco because the two are difficult to fit together. And so they won't have their own spikes, and you'll have spikes on their side, and the game can just be over right then and there. And also, it's also nice because wearing down Graveler is also nice because Stantler really doesn't want to be facing a Graveler while asleep because like it takes a lot from EQ, and it's only 1 in 3 to get a good to get the Earthquake roll. It's the same for Sudowoodo and Pupitar as well. And if you're running Wigglytuff on your team, then Wigglytuff can either force Sudowoodo to explode by setting up multiple curses, which makes Ninetales more dangerous, or Ninetales can wear down Sudowoodo and force it to Exploom early, and thus meaning that it can't stop a Wigglytuff sleep later on. It's even better for Pupitar because Pupitar completely shits on Wigglytuff with Screech, and meaning that like without even needing to explode. Yeah. So that's how Sunny Day Ninetales has been used in recent times, and that's generally how like a lot of people, myself included, have been using Ninetales. This is kind of like a self-brag, but but if you look at the GSC Discord chat logs, you'll see that I actually was the one who came up with the idea of like Sunny Day, and I believe the initial idea was actually light screen. Some people thought like light screen, but Ninetales can't actually learn light screen. So another idea people have, but Ninetales can't actually learn reflect, and some people have theorized reflect on it because it lets it turn Dugtrio into dead weights, and also lets the team take advantage of Dugtrio, but it generally doesn't work as well because Dugtrio doesn't switch into Ninetales as much as octillery does, so it's not realistically just not gonna work. You only really do it unless you like protect like a restaurant mitts, and so, or if it's like really desperate, or if your opponent's team is somehow like really desperate. But yeah. And if you want to talk about, if we were to talk about Sunny Day Ninetales teams, this is the team that I made a while back and have been using to somewhat decent success. Wait, actually, is this? That shouldn't be Gloom. I'm pretty sure that should be, yeah, that should be xatu, not Gloom, actually. I don't know what happened. And this should be Hidden Power Electric. So, you basically have your standard big four for Dugtrio Spikes offense teams in xatu, Dugtrio, Octillery, and Pineco. And then you have like Restock Stantler, and then you have Ninetales. So basically, it kind of follows like all the similar concepts I've been talking about before, where once Ninetales set up Sun, then Stantler takes advantage of it, and Pineco also set up Spikes with it. And because of Ninetales' hefty lengths of resistance, because of Ninetales' really good defensive profile, then that means it'll often get a decent amount of opportunities per game on a game-to-game basis to set up Sun. Especially against Weezing, especially if you face like a Weezing who is one of the most who is a very difficult threat to deal with most of the time, and a lot of the time, and like especially nice in Disregard because Ninetales checking Weezing means that Dugtrio doesn't need to switch into it, and Dugtrio, while being a fine switch in, also has to risk a poison, which essentially neuters it as offensive threat for later in the game. So Ninetales taking up that role is very, very much appreciated. And also, Restock Stantler also really appreciates Ninetales because it makes it less punishing for it to be forced to rest and then be facing a xatu. So in general, you could generally see how Ninetales can just enable its team in not in ways of not just with Sunny Day, but with being a check, but with everything it checks. All This is how most people, including me, have been using Ninetales in more recent times, and all of this is why me personally, I have had a overall much higher opinion of Ninetales than I initially had. But Sunny Day Ninetales is generally just not perfect, and it's still introduced, and it still has flaws. So the main issue with Sunny Day Ninetales is that the amount of Pokemon that can actually take advantage of the sun is actually way more limited than I've been making it out to be. Like the three I've named, it's like Stantler, Pineco, Wigglytuff, and I guess to a degree Dugtrio, but like even that's kind of a stretch. It really doesn't take advantage of it super well. And even Wigglytuff itself is somewhat of a stretch. Like, if you... So, what that means... this very limited pool of Pokemon means that, like, it's actually very, very difficult to, there's actually not that much versatility in, Sunny Day Ninetales team. Like, if we think about, like, the other offensive threats that... If we think about, like, other offensive threats that, that are commonplace on balance teams, commonplace on offensive teams, a lot of them don't actually synergize with Sunny Day Ninetales well. Like, say, Furo, who, in theory, would really, really love to, be able to switch to Octillery, because it doesn't have... its switch to Octillery isn't the best otherwise. It doesn't actually take advantage of an Octillery under Sun, because Octillery has, super effective hidden power coverage versus it. Or, God forbid, Ice Beam. That's also the same reason why Xatu doesn't take advantage of it well. Gimmicky Solar Beam sets aside, which... No, don't use Solar Beam Xatu with Sunny Day Ninetales. It is not a good idea. Trust me. Anyways, not... And then, like, if we take a... And then, the aforementioned Weezing and Primeape, in theory, would love, Ninetales' Sun to, switch it to Octillery, which otherwise deals big damage to them. In practice, it doesn't end up working out because they rely on Thunder. And before you ask, no, Thunderbolt is not a good option on them. So, yeah, Ninetales is... Sunny Day Ninetales is very, very one-dimensional, and, like, I don't even think it's a stretch to say that this particular team is the only real, like, this particular team is the only real team I can see Sunny Day Ninetales working on. Maybe some, like, gimmicky, like, full Sunny Day team was, like, Magmar, but, like, if you want, like, actual consistency, then, like, this is probably the best you're gonna get. The next best option is, like, you can maybe somehow change the Stantler set for, like, Curse Light Screen, but then you'll be so much worse against Dugong because you don't have a consistent switch into it. You could try to make this a Wigglytuff, but like Wigglytuff, as in general, is a lot harder to justify than a Restock Stantler, in my opinion, because Restock Stantler fills Wigglytuff's role of taking advantage of passive Pokemon that offensive teams may otherwise struggle with, such as aforementioned Dugong, Chinchou, Gloom, etc. And now, Sunny Day, and another thing is about Sunny Day on Ninetales is that it doesn't, it's not like a silver bullet to all of Ninetales' problems. Like, it doesn't like just magically make them go away, and some of them it actually makes it worse. Like, without Toxic, like, everything I've been saying is explaining how, like, Sunny Day Ninetales can neuter Octillery, who is one of the most dangerous, wait, sorry, I'm trying to say like 20 different things at once. Who is extremely dangerous and one of the worst downsides to have, worst pokes be weak to. But you know another Pokemon who I've talked about in this video that Ninetales is also weak to, is also a top threat, is also extremely dangerous offensively, and is also one of the worst pokes to be weak to? Ding ding, Dugtrio. Notice, and Sunny Day does not fix that problem, and it actually flat out just makes it worse. Because, because without Toxic, then Ninetales doesn't have the potential to just completely ruin Dugtrio on the Switch. Now, that wouldn't even be that bad if it wasn't for the issue number 2, which is that Sunny Day actually neuters your own Octillery as well, meaning that their opponent's Dugtrio under Sun is even more dangerous. if it manages to get a switch, if it manages to switch in while Ninetales' Sun is active. Granted, that does kind of go both ways, and your own Doug Trio can be more dangerous as a result. But given how dangerous Doug Trio is to the offensive teams that Ninetales fits on, I mean the offensive teams that the dangerous Doug Trio is to offensive teams, then Ninetales potentially making that problem worse, it can end up being very, very disastrous. And the Sunny Day in general, can also cause you to end up causing you to just shoot yourself in the foot because of the issues it will cause with your own octillery. And you can't really replace octillery on your team to try and rectify this, because octillery is an absolutely integral piece of offensive teams. Like, I've said this before many times, but either one of octillery or dugong is more or less mandatory on every serious team. So, and Ninetales neutering its own octillery can sometimes end disastrously. Now, so that's all. This is why I'm not entirely sure if Sunny Day Ninetales will be like. Honestly, all this is why like Sunny Day is overall kind of a niche choice and is very one-dimensional, and you do kind of need to go out of your way to build a team around it rather than just include it on your team for the sake of having it on your team. Especially because it's generally a lot less beneficial for balanced teams. Because these teams already have the balanced teams Ninetales fit on already have Gloom to handle octillery, and also because these teams would also really love Toxic on Ninetales, because Curse Lightscreen Stantler is one of their biggest threats, and Ninetales' ability to prevent it from going out of hand with Toxic would otherwise be be really, really good for these teams. It probably still can work on balanced teams, especially because these teams also make use of Restock Stantler themselves. But I don't really know if that has been explored. So I think Ninetales in general is kind of a recent thing that it still needs a bit more exploration to see if this is like truly Ninetales' if this will truly be the thing that causes Ninetales to resurge and be like a genuine, to be much more of a threat, to be the threat it once used to be, or if like it'll just be just this kind of like a niche option that like can work on offensive teams but generally isn't seen. Now, although I think it'll be much harder to fit Sunny Day Ninetales on a team than like your regular Toxic Ninetales. I do generally think that like the offensive teams with Sunny Day Ninetales are generally easier and overall better than like the previous attempts to make Toxic Ninetales work on like offensive or even balanced teams. Because the ceiling for it is potentially really fucking high. Because just Stantler getting more opportunities to just Stantler causing even more destruction than it already does. Yes, please. Yes, please. So, I guess we just kind of need to just wait and see to see how Sunny Day Ninetales fares going forward. Now, some players have been, as for other options on Ninetales, it's worth noting that I guess the last thing I could say is just talk about like the general last options people have explored on Ninetales. In theory, Ninetales can use Hidden Power Electric or Grass for Octillery, but it's generally not worth it because they don't even 3-hit KO. I don't even think they're guaranteed the 3-hit KO Octillery, and it's generally just better to just use So I generally think it would be better to just use Sunny Day to just neuter octillery that way instead. Another thing people have, I think people have really advocate for Ninetales is actually Roar, which can phase out octillery and force spike chip damage on it, and also be an emergency stop to various setup sleepers, and it's also notably one of the few ways to truly hard counter Flareon grows past teams. Because Ninetales isn't threatened by Flareon one bit, unless it for some reason wants to run Double Edge. And even then, it's still not entirely threatening. It's still not like a foolproof way of preventing Ninetales from stopping it. And the reason why that Roar isn't as common, although some people, the reason why although some people like Estarasa really like Roar, the reason why it's not as common is because you need to give up rest off on it, because Roar fails when called by Sleep Talk. So yeah, I think like also Affirmation Reflect, which in my opinion is more less a band-aid on a broken ankle situation. Like it doesn't really work out the way you'd want. You could. I think a funny idea would actually be to reflect on the first thought over Sleep Talk with Sunny Day, which in theory would let Ninetales beat both of its checks, but in general, it just doesn't seem worth it. Because it feels like it's kind of like just going too far out of your way to fix your shortcomings, so much so that you negate the thing you're using this Pokemon for in the first place. Like without Rest Talk, it severely hinders your ability to keep in check Weezing and Xatu over the course of a game. And it's kind of a thing you'll see. This kind of concept does exist in the higher tiers. Like for example, the reason why Entei generally just doesn't see use in OU, despite the fact that like it actually doesn't have a lot of the shortcomings that something like say Moltres would, where like Entei isn't logic weak, can threaten Snorlax outside of Sun, and is much bulkier. Like in theory, like Entei patches up a lot of the holes that Moltres would have, but the overall, like because Entei is like so much weaker, that so much so that like in the process of patching up all these holes, you are hindering yourself in what you should be in, what your original goal is to. So much so that like the quote unquote patching out holes doesn't even always end up working out in the first place. So it's mostly just so when hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, if Ninetales, it is quite a shame if that Ninetales didn't get Light Screen, because like it would actually be so much more versatile on offensive teams. Although if I'm being honest, Light Screen Ninetales plus Stantler does actually kind of seem broken, because like keep in mind Light Screen doesn't just mean that Stantler beats Octillery. It also means that it can only win Xatu. So it might just push Stantler to like actual ban-worthiness. So Light Screen Ninetales plus Stantler might actually just be flat out broken. So in a way, I'm just kind of glad it doesn't have Light Screen. Yeah. Anyways, that's GSC NU Ninetales for you. Will it see a resurgence? It's impossible to say, but I think it has potential. I think it has potential to make an impact, but who knows? It's still overall kind of a niche set in the grand scheme of things. So, anyways, that's been me. I hope you learned something. If you disagree with anything I said, please feel free to leave in the comments. And that's it. Peace.